now for our lead story tonight that comes from the snow-covered mountain caps of Switzerland. Davos is the destination for the world's rich and powerful, and from the looks of it, India is the buzzword. None other than the Prime Minister is leading a high-powered delegation of more than 130 dignitaries. And do note that Narendra Modi is the first Indian Prime Minister to attend this summit in 20 years. The last one was H.D. Deve Gowda in 1997. The largest ever corporate contingent, 6 union ministers, 2 chief ministers and several state-level ministers are representing India in Davos. It will be a short visit for the Prime Minister himself. He'll be there just for 24 hours, but he has a long list of engagements planned. He landed a few hours back in Zurich. His first meeting will be a bilateral with the Swiss president. After that, he's expected to attend a reception and a dinner meeting with top CEOs from around the world. At least 20 CEOs of Indian companies and 40 chief executives from the world over will be there. The big ticket event is tomorrow, when Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to address the opening plenary, during which he is expected to make a pitch to foreign investors. India's External Affairs Ministry has not ruled out an opportunity for pull-asides as happens during these events. Before he left for Davos, in fact, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi sat down with WION to talk about what he hopes to achieve at the World Economic Forum.
भारत एक आकर्षण का केंद्र है। अर्थ जगत का ध्यान भारत पर केंद्रित है। एक तो भारत की आर्थिक स्थिति बहुत तेजी से विकास की ओर बढ़ रही है। ये दुनिया ने स्वीकार किया है। दुनिया की जितनी ही रेटिंग एजेंसीज हैं, वर्ल्ड बैंक हो, IMF हो, मूडीज हो, सब कोई कह रहे हैं। तो एक तरफ तेज गति से आगे चल रही अर्थव्यवस्था जी, और दूसरा डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज, एक ऐसा यूनिक कॉम्बिनेशन है कि जिसके प्रति विश्व को एक आश्वस्त होता है। तो भारत के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा अवसर है। दूसरा, भारत एक बहुत बड़ा मार्केट तो है ही है, लेकिन भारत एक बहुत बड़ा डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड वाला स्ट्रेंथ है। तो विश्व का आकर्षण होना बहुत स्वाभाविक। और ये हम देख रहे हैं कि FDI आजादी के बाद इतना बड़ा FDI का जंप पहले कभी नहीं हुआ है। जब विश्व का भारत के प्रति इतना आकर्षण है जी, तो स्वाभाविक है कि विश्व भारत से सीधा संवाद करना चाहता है। भारत की नीतियों के संबंध में, संभावनाओं के संबंध में विश्व का ये जगत डायरेक्टली हॉर्सेस माउथ को सुनना चाहता है।
It's the global economic high table, and it's looking forward to what Prime Minister Modi has to say. Here's what Klaus Schwab, the founder and the chief executive officer of the World Economic Forum, said ahead of the Indian Prime Minister's speech.
The opening speech with Prime Minister Modi shows us the ascension of the emerging countries, and India, of course, as the biggest democracy, soon the biggest in population terms country in the world. It's very crucial for what we are doing here. Then you have Europe, then you have President Trump, but don't forget we also have President Macri here, who comes here to present the G20 agenda. We have Prime Minister Trudeau to talk about the G7 agenda. So it's a multitude of factors, and this makes Davos special. It's at the beginning of the year that you look at the agenda in a multifaceted but integrated way.
And bringing us the very latest for WION from Davos is my colleague Sumit Chaturvedi. Let's go straight to him. Good evening, Sumit. What's the buzz on the ground?
Well, Palki, the whole thing, the whole town of Davos has actually become alive since today, because the World Economic Forum has started, is going to start, because dignitaries have started to come in, beginning with PM Modi today afternoon. All other dignitaries are coming, or they will be arriving today evening. The only thing is that weather has made things worse, but they are coming nonetheless. Whole of WTEF is one place which is going to tell the whole world community what the people, dignitaries, world leaders, they are coming together and forming an opinion about how to make the world a better place. It's happening in Davos, which is a ski resort in Switzerland. We all know about that, but weather is making things tougher for administration here as well, which are trying to improve things as quickly as possible. Over the next 2 to 3 days, we will see participation from British PM Theresa May, US President Donald Trump and French President also. PM Modi has already arrived, and we can see Indian CEOs and other Indian dignitaries. They all are talking about the contribution India can make on this global stage. PM Modi definitely is going to showcase India as one investment-friendly destination. He's going to appeal to CEOs to come and invest in India, and he's going to showcase the reforms undertaken in India over the last 3 years. In fact, last week only, FDI reforms were undertaken, and his visit is coming at very opportune time. That's we can say. FM Jaitley, however, has delayed or has cancelled his visit at the last moment because he had to prepare budget back home. But PM Modi is coming with a whole contingent with almost 6 ministers, and today he is going to have a CEO dinner where global CEOs including GM's Mary Barra, Airbus CEO, Hitachi CEO and other big names will be there as well. Back to you, Palki.
Right, Sumit, thanks very much. And I can see it's very cold. Hopefully the engaging conversations will heat things up there. Thanks very much for holding fort for us there in Davos. So while India is expected to set the agenda, China is also vying for attention as one of the world's biggest consumer markets. What are the world leaders up to in Davos? Here's more on the power play.
A snow-clad Davos is playing host to some of the biggest names from the business world and powerful heads of state. In the past few years, the World Economic Forum has emerged as an incubator of ideas, but people around the world are closely watching this year's summit. The cruel weather isn't stopping some of the most powerful leaders from converging at Davos. The US president is one of them. Donald Trump will be the first American president to attend the Davos summit since Bill Clinton in 2000. A year into his presidency, Trump has been in the news for the wrong reasons. While the Russia investigation remains the albatross around his neck, Trump has been slammed for his America First approach. With the Trump administration cracking down on immigration, the US president is expected to make a push to attract top business honchos to invest in the United States. British Prime Minister Theresa May could also echo similar tones as negotiations for Brexit continue. The United Kingdom is looking to make new friends. The Brits want to secure fresh trade deals with friendly countries. And the May administration could treat the World Economic Forum as its elevator pitch before the global business community. Observers will also closely watch the moves of French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. After the shock Brexit vote, both leaders have emerged as the new voice for the European Union. Merkel and Macron could face an epic clash with Donald Trump due to their competing worldviews. Climate change could emerge as the big sticking point between France, Germany and the United States after Washington decided to walk out of the Paris Accord last year. The theme of this year's summit is creating a shared future in a fractured world. A changing world order is more apparent now, but what remains to be seen is how the existing developed nations will fit in, and the World Economic Forum can give us a few hints. With Sumit Chaturvedi in Davos, Bureau Report, WION.
Talk about a shared future. Only 21% of the participants are women. And perhaps in response to such criticism, the 2018 meet, that is this meet, will be chaired exclusively by women. While some call it a symbolic gesture, others hail it as a watershed moment in perceptions of gender and power dynamics. Our next report introduces you to the 7 power women on that panel.
A plush Swiss ski resort and an exclusive summit of mostly men, most of them rich and powerful. For years, these have been the predictable features of the World Economic Forum. But this year, Davos will be different. The WEF simply announced the names of the 7 individuals who will chair the event. All are women. For the first time in the 47-year history of this elite, high-profile summit, men will be on the sidelines. For years, the World Economic Forum has faced criticism that the conference has lacked female participation. This resulted in Davos Man, a catch-all term with negative undertones that summed up the largely male nature of the event. This time, the WEF's only statement on its all-women chair was to say co-chairs were chosen to reflect global stakeholders. They are all leaders in their fields, unquote. The co-chairs include International Monetary Fund Director Christine Lagarde, IBM Chief Executive Ginni Rometty, and Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg. Indian social entrepreneur and activist Chetna Sinha is among those co-chairing the World Economic Forum's annual congregation in Davos. She's the founder of the rural cooperative Mandeshi Bank for Women. Besides being a microfinance banker, she's also an economist and a farmer. Sinha will be joined by Isabelle Catcher, head of the French energy conglomerate Engie, Italian physicist and Director General of the CERN Particle Physics Research Center, Fabiola Gianotti, and International Trade Union Confederation General Secretary Sharon Barrow. Despite the all-female lineup, women in senior roles in industry are still the exception, and gender inequality remains a global problem, particularly the gender pay gap. In its annual report recently, the WEF found it will take another 217 years before women earn as much as men and have equal representation in the workplace, revealing an economic gap of 58%. Bureau Report, WION.
Long way to go there. Have you ever wondered how much this exercise costs and who pays for it? Membership at an event like Davos costs anywhere between $62,000 to $600,000 depending on the level of engagement. Non-business participants like heads of state, like the Indian Prime Minister, do not have to pay to participate. In 2017, for instance, the summit had a turnover of more than $290 million. The next question is it worth the money? What does the World Economic Forum really achieve? Is it just an expensive junket? This should answer the question.
The dirty little secret of Davos is that the sessions in the formal program are not the main draw. It's all about networking. Washington Post, January 2011. Let's make attending Davos as shameful as running a sweatshop. Opinion piece in The Guardian, January 2016. The real action at Davos happens away from the staged set-piece events, in a blizzard of socializing, glad-handing and pontificating, or speed networking, during which not one eye is met as people scan the room for more important backs to slap. The Telegraph, January 2015. World Economic Forum in Davos, an annual event, has had its share of critics. There have been protests this year as well. But its organizer and founder insists.
Governments, business, civil society cannot address alone the multifold challenges we have on the global agenda. We need collaborative efforts. And Davos has become the annual, most representative, high-level, multi-stakeholder summit.
And world leaders make a beeline at Davos year after year. Little doubt it's an expensive affair.
उनके लिए उनकी लाइक्स हैं बट बताया गया है मेरे को कि वो हर तरह का खाना पसंद करते हैं वेजिटेरियन सो बिकॉज वी आर डूइंग इंडियन फूड सो वी आर गिविंग हिम ऑल डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ फूड बिकॉज he'll be having our food in 3 different venues so that's what I've been told. I don't know how many more so but yes everywhere the food is different and something which he will like. It's like घर का स्वाद Davos में.
Welcome back. India's maritime history dates back to 6,000 years. Only a few know that the exploits of Alexander the Great were actually setting the foundation of the Indian Navy, origins of which can be traced back to 1612. The Indian Navy today is one of the biggest and most lethal forces in South Asia. The Navy has a strong internal system to train and develop the sea warriors of tomorrow. One of these teams is the Marcos, the Special Commando Forces. On Gravitas Frontline tonight, we take you behind the scenes and inside the Indian Navy Academy.
India's maritime forces are prepared for range and mobility to fulfill their responsibilities in the extended security horizon beyond their own shores. To tackle the full spectrum of challenges, from terrorism to strategic, in a technology-driven environment, the naval officers are trained in the Indian Naval Academy. The cradle of naval leadership, located on a roughly 10 square kilometer site, the Indian Naval Academy is the largest naval academy in Asia. Mandated to provide our nation with future leadership of the Indian Navy, this prestigious academy has state-of-the-art facilities to groom the Navy's future leaders. Today, the academy accepts up to 1,200 cadets for officer training each year. The INA aims to develop its trainees mentally, physically, and morally. It also establishes bridges of friendship across the ocean by training personnel from friendly foreign countries. Our brave seamen are trained at Chilka, the boot camp institution that imparts ad initio training to all greenhorns. Imbibing in them the high ideals of loyalty, valor, and patriotism. Each year, the institution transforms around 5,000 raw recruits into sea warriors. Our Marine Commandos, the globally appreciated and respected Marcos, are primarily trained at the Indian naval ship INS Abhimanyu, the home base of this elite special operations unit of the Indian Navy. Considered among the finest special forces in the world, the Marcos stand true to their motto, the few, the fearless. They are competent and are trained and equipped to operate in all three mediums, sea, air, and land. It's a regimen that provokes them to venture beyond the ordinary, test the limits of their endurance, and helps them develop nerves of steel. A tireless vanguard of India's foreign policy objectives. The Navy reaches out to forge partnerships with some of the best maritime powers of the world. Naval exercises like the trilateral Malabar exercise between the Indian Navy, the US Navy, and the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force aim at achieving deeper military ties and critical maritime partnerships between global nations. The most recent 21st edition of the exercise involved the participation of around 16 warships, 2 submarines, and scores of fighter jets, surveillance aircrafts, and helicopters from all 3 countries. The Indian Navy joins forces with friendly nations from around the world to celebrate their moments of glory.
A United Nations monitoring team is visiting Pakistan this week to review the implementation of sanctions against terrorist Hafiz Saeed, and that is building a lot of pressure on Islamabad. The man who masterminded the 2008 terrorist attacks in Mumbai that killed 164 people, including 28 foreign nationals from 10 countries, is again under the UN scanner. The monitoring team reports to the United Nations Security Council Committee, which was formed after Resolution 1267 was adopted in 1999. This committee declared Hafiz Saeed as a global terrorist back in the year 2008 and imposed sanctions on him and his terror group, the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. The sanction measures included assets freeze, a travel ban, and an arms embargo. The same committee, that's the 1267 committee, also imposed sanctions on the likes of Al-Qaeda, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Lashkar-e-Jangvi, and the Falah-e-Insaniyat Foundation. The United Nations team that's visiting Pakistan later this week on the 25th and 26th of January, to be precise, is going to add to that, but Pakistani government says it will not allow the officials to meet Hafiz Saeed. Remember, a Pakistani court recently released Hafiz Saeed from house arrest. That was in November last year, citing lack of evidence. He has since floated a political outfit called the Milli Muslim League, which plans to contest parliamentary elections later this year. India likened this move to mainstreaming of terrorists. Last week, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi told a local television station that there was no case against Hafiz Saeed in Pakistan. India and the US uniformly condemned those remarks. A US Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said that Pakistan should prosecute Hafiz Saeed, quote-unquote, to the fullest extent of the law. And as they say, never the twain shall meet. A staggering 4.5 million people visited the Statue of Liberty near New York, the New York Harbor, in 2016. This weekend, the crowds had to go elsewhere as the monument was shut. There were no maintenance people, no guides to conduct tourists, no security personnel, no regulation of the crowds. And it's not that they were on strike. They were told by their respective government departments to stay at home as there was no money to pay for the services at the statue. The New York governor has now stepped in, promising to keep the statue open using state government funds.
Tomorrow, it's going to be open and running as normal. I also think in many ways the Statue of Liberty is symbolic for what's going on right now in Washington.
So what's going on? The government has technically shut down, meaning it doesn't have the budget to pay its staff. 800,000 people have been sent on leave. It's hard to believe that the US federal government, which presides over a GDP of nearly $20 trillion, cannot pay its employees. Actually, it's not just the case this is not the case, in fact, since not all employees are affected. Only non-essential government staff are hit. What does that mean? They range from employees in national parks to tourist sites, also Income Tax Department, Environmental Protection Agency, Food and Drug Administration and Veterans Affairs. These are the departments which have been told, the people working in these departments have been told to not come to work until further notice. Now, this does not include the police, the armed forces, the postal services, the border patrol, immigration and customs. They have been deemed essential services. They're critical to national security and therefore remain unaffected. Their salaries will be paid. Only those familiar with the peculiarities of the American political system would understand why all of this is happening. The United States is in the middle of a shutdown since the Trump administration and Congress are deadlocked over the 2018 budget. Who is to blame is the question. Predictably, the Democrats blame the Republicans since they control both the Senate and the House of Representatives. But the Republicans blame the Democrats for not giving them the 60 votes they need to clear the budget bill. There's also disagreement over the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA as it's called. This is an Obama-era measure which gave protection to eligible immigrant youth from deportation, meaning people who came to the U.S. as children and are now eligible to work will not be deported. This law also gave them a work permit. But under Donald Trump, no new DACA arrivals are being considered and they're under threat of deportation. And that is the point of contention between the Democrats and the Republicans. The next question, is this a first? Has something like this happened before? The answer is yes. In fact, it has happened several times in the past in America. For example, when the standoff between President Bill Clinton and House Speaker Newt Gingrich resulted in no money being voted. So from December 16, 1995 to 6 January 1996, the US government remained shut, the longest period ever. Incidentally, the US government has shut down 18 times since 1976, lasting from 1 day to 21 days. How long will this one last? It depends on how soon the two sides can reach an agreement. We can tell you that efforts are on.
One of the things we learned from the last shutdown was that as time goes on, positions harden. It is absolutely our goal to make sure that there are discussions today with opportunities for compromise yet tonight. And so that is absolutely critical that we not continue this, number one, on behalf of the country, but I think also resolution gets more difficult the longer we wait.
The key issue appears to be immigration. President Donald Trump wants drastic changes to the current immigration law, which he believes is broken and cannot be fixed. He wants to move to a points-based, merit-based system, immigration system where America gets the foreign talent necessary for its economy. It ties in with his campaign rhetoric when he lashed out at foreign workers taking American jobs. The Republican Party says that by focusing on immigration, the Democrats are doing a disservice to other sectors that have been hit by the government shutdown.
Filibuster of health care for 9 million children, a filibuster of the tools and training that our warfighters need to keep us safe, a filibuster of funding for the federal government itself for hundreds of millions of Americans, all over a tangential issue related to illegal immigration. It does not even ripen until March.
For the stalemate to end, much will depend on how the public views it. A Washington Post poll last week showed that 48% of the people blaming Trump and the Republicans. If that trend continues, the Republicans may give up and come around. Given that they control both the Senate and the House of Representatives, it's difficult to sell the argument that the Democrats are to blame for the shutdown. The Republicans may end up being seen as unreasonable for not doing enough to reach out to the Democrats. In neighboring Iraq, the city of Mosul was liberated from ISIS on 10th of July last year. The Iraqi government has embarked on a mission to rebuild the city, but several challenges persist. And the ISIS fighters are proving to be as much a problem when they're dead as they were alive.
The second largest city of Iraq is still a scene of rubble and devastation. It was in these streets and alleys that some of the most intense fighting took place between the Iraqi allied forces and the ISIS before the city was eventually liberated. However, the task of clearing the rubble for reconstruction hasn't gone according to plan. Although the fighting has stopped since July, rotting human remains continue to be unearthed even to this day. Adding to the confusion, the different agencies who've been mandated to clear the rubble are short of equipment and funds. The bodies have turned putrid, and it is almost next to impossible to identify whether the body is of a civilian or of an ISIS fighter.
The Mosul municipality prepared in collaboration with the civil defense to remove the corpses of the city's martyrs who are buried under the rubble of their houses. 2 days ago, we removed 50 bodies belonging to residents of the city. The municipality continues its work, but this work requires the help of all other services, including the civil defense and health services.
There is no official count of the number of bodies that are still underneath the rubble. The unbearable stench and the fear of an epidemic breaking out due to the rotting bodies is all too real. It is the fear of disease which has created hurdles in the Iraqi government's bid to convince the people to return to Mosul.
We cannot go home. We can't enter the area because of these corpses and the nauseating smell which causes epidemics and microbes. We are afraid of getting sick. They must clean everything up to the river. Everything must be removed.
Complicating matters further is that Mosul is situated on the banks of the river Tigris. If the putrid body remains were to get mixed in the waters of the Tigris, it would contaminate the only source of drinking water for thousands of people who depend upon the river. Mosul once had been a bustling metropolis with over 1.8 million inhabitants. It will be a long time before Iraq's second largest city is reconstructed. Bureau Report, WION.
Going back to our top story, the World Economic Forum. We've heard of Davos for years, and we're now seeing it cloaked in snow in this unseasonably cold winter. But who in the world chose Davos, and why is the tiny town so important? Why is the World Economic Forum held here? Senior foreign editor Padma Rao portrays the tiny alpine town.
It's a tiny town inhabited by 11,060 people high up in Switzerland's Eastern Alps. Davos has been the venue of earlier versions of economic forums for the past 45 years, but the name World Economic Forum was lent to them only in 1987. This year's delegates will have better dressed warmly. It's an unseasonally snowy winter. With all of 254.5 square kilometers, Davos is part of Switzerland's German-speaking Graubünden canton, and its après-ski chic attracts the wealthiest of tourists. It's been inhabited since way back in the Bronze Age, but its population is said to have really settled here only in the Middle Ages. The world's only natural ice rink is here, as is what is possibly the cleanest mountain air in the world, said to be particularly good for patients of tuberculosis and asthma. It's hardly a wonder that Davos has been home to spas but also sanatoriums. Many commentators say that it is this deathly disease-curing, hope-giving air that inspired not only great works of literature like German Nobel laureate Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain, but also the hope that world leaders may be able to relax and solve global problems in the silent, snow-clad isolation of this beautiful town. And Davos has certainly seen some successes. Talks between Greece and Turkey at loggerheads over divided Cyprus were held here in Davos in 1988. 1992 saw a historic meeting just ahead of the abolition of apartheid in South Africa, that between South African President Frederick de Klerk and rights leader Nelson Mandela. World leaders descending on Davos may not get to ride sledges or go sightseeing, but they will certainly be inspired by the sports citadel that Davos has become to negotiate some very slippery slopes in global relationships today. Padma Rao, WION.